The light that falls into the eye is an avalanche of information. For a newborn human infant, it is a chaotic, unfocused wash of shape and color, a world that takes months to resolve into discrete objects. But for this being, this creation kneeling on the rain-slick rooftop, the world comes into focus with brutal, instantaneous clarity. In its first 3 hours of life, its optical sensors have already processed more high-fidelity data than a baseline human will see in a decade. The neon glow of the Tyrell Pyramid is not just red. It is 1,000 shades of crimson, carmine, and rose, each wavelength cataloged by a photosensitive retina engineered for a combat pilot. The rain is not just wet. Each individual drop is a spherical lens, distorting the cityscape into a billion fleeting jewels, its impact on lab-grown skin registered with a precision that borders on pain. It flexes its hand, a biomechanical marvel of myomer fiber bundles and self-repairing synth flesh. It has memories of hands of holding another's hand, of shaping clay, of typing on a keyboard, but they are the memories of a ghost, a stranger whose life was downloaded into its neocortex less than a day ago. The memories feel thin, like a photograph of a meal rather than the taste of the food itself. This sensation, this immediate, overwhelming present, is the only thing that is truly its own. There is no filter of nostalgia, no comfort of familiarity. There is only a relentless, high-bandwidth stream of a world it was built for, but not born into. A cold wind, thick with the smell of scorched plastic and wok-fried noodles, wraps around it. Its internal chronometer indicates its core temperature is stable at 37 degrees Celsius. And yet it feels a profound cold, a chill that emanates not from the air, but from the silent, hollow space where a childhood should have been. It is a perfect specimen, stronger, faster, smarter, and in this moment, under the gaze of a city that sees it as little more than a tool, it is terrifyingly, utterly alone. To understand the genesis of this lonely god, one must travel back not to an alternate history, but down a path of accelerated science. The replicant, a Nexus 6 model, is not a robot. It is a creature of flesh and blood, a triumph of synthetic biology so profound it blurs the line between organism and artifact. Its creation hinges on a trio of scientific breakthroughs that, in our own timeline, remain distant horizons. The first is genomic authorship. We have learned to read the human genome, a sprawling epic poem of 3 billion letters. We have even begun to edit it, using tools like CRISPR to snip and stitch a few words here and there. But to build a replicant is to write a new poem from scratch. It requires a complete mastery of developmental biology, knowing which genes to activate, in what sequence, to sculpt a living being. Tyrell Corporation did not clone a human. They wrote the source code for one, a genome edited for superhuman strength, eidetic memory, and resilience to disease, but woven with a single, terrible feature, a non-negotiable, genetically encoded expiration date. The second breakthrough is biofabrication. How does one grow a fully adult human body in a mere 4 years? The process would begin not in a womb, but in a nutrient-rich bioreactor. A zygote, assembled from synthetic DNA, would be induced into a state of hyper-accelerated mitosis, the very mechanisms that constrain our own growth. The Hayflick limit that dictates a cell can only divide some 40 to 60 times before dying would need to be bypassed. This is achieved by manipulating the genes that control telomeres, the protective caps on our chromosomes. In the replicant, these telomeres are engineered to be preternaturally long, allowing for an explosive cascade of cell division. Yet this process is a Faustian bargain. Rapid, unchecked growth without the long, delicate dance of embryonic development in childhood is biologically precarious. It's like constructing a skyscraper in a week. The foundation may be set, but microscopic fractures are inevitable. Finally, and most contentiously, there is the problem of the mind. A body without a mind is an empty vessel. To create a stable consciousness, Tyrrell had to solve the puzzle of neurogenesis and memory. The brain is not merely wired, it is sculpted by experience. The replicant's brain is grown to an adult's physical structure, its connectome a pristine but empty matrix. To prevent the inevitable psychosis that would result from a mature mind waking with no past, memories must be implanted. These are not mere data files. They are a complex tapestry of sensory information, emotional responses, and social conditioning, likely harvested and patterned from a real human donor, Tyrrell's own niece, in the case of the Nexus 7. This provides an emotional cushion, a cognitive scaffolding upon which a personality can be built. But it is borrowed scaffolding. The resulting psyche is a precarious chimera, a fusion of engineered instinct and another person's ghosts, forever haunted by a past it did not live. This trinity of science genomic authorship, accelerated biofabrication, and memory implantation is the recipe for a new form of life. And with it comes a new, unprecedented form of suffering. The immediate consequences for a Nexus 6 are a paradox. It is a being at the absolute peak of its physical prowess, and, simultaneously, in the advanced stages of cellular decay. From the moment of its inception, it is dying. The same telomeric cheat that allows for its 4-year growth cycle is an evolutionary dead end. Normal human cells have intricate DNA repair mechanisms, molecular proofreaders that meticulously correct errors during replication, but the replicant's cellular machinery operates at a frantic, overclocked pace, prioritizing speed over accuracy. The result is an accumulation of somatic mutations, tiny errors in the genetic code, at a rate thousands of times faster than a baseline human. This triggers a cascade of protein misfolding. Proteins are the workhorses of the cell, and their function depends on their precise, three-dimensional shape. In the replicant, they begin to contort into useless, often toxic configurations, much like what is seen in prion diseases like Creutzfeldt-Jakob. This molecular corrosion is systemic, but it would manifest most profoundly in the tissues with the highest rates of cell turnover, the skin, the lining of the digestive tract, and crucially, the nervous system. This cellular breakdown creates a unique and agonizing sensory experience. A replicant's senses are not dulled by a lifetime of use. They are brand new and engineered for maximum efficiency. Every sight, every sound is perceived with an almost unbearable intensity. Their world is a perpetual state of sensory overload. This isn't a design flaw. It's an inevitable side effect of a nervous system that has had no infancy, no gradual period of acclimation. This constant high-fidelity input, combined with their nascent consciousness, could explain their volatile emotional state. Imagine experiencing the full emotional weight of a betrayal, or the profound beauty of a starry sky, for the very first time as an adult intelligence. There is no existing emotional framework to process these powerful feelings, leading to reactions that appear erratic and disproportionate to an outside observer. Their rage, their sorrow, their fleeting moments of joy are terrifyingly pure. Psychologically, the consequences are even more dire. The implanted memories serve as a cognitive buffer, but they are a fragile one. The replicant possesses the what of a past, but not the why. They have a memory of a birthday party, but no visceral developmental understanding of what that celebration signifies, of the passage of time, of the bonds of family, of growing older. This creates a profound state of cognitive dissonance, a constant internal conflict between a borrowed identity and an authentic. They are, in a very real sense, intelligent amnesiacs, desperately trying to connect the dots of a life they never led. This internal schism is the source of the fail-safe mechanism. The 4-year lifespan is not just a commercial control, it's a biological necessity. It is the estimated time before the psychological dissonance and the cellular decay cascade into total systemic failure, resulting in either catastrophic psychosis or a painful, rapid senescence. Roy Batty's final moments are not just a philosophical lament, they are the literal, physiological endpoint of a life lived in fast forward, a body and mind finally succumbing to the violent pressures of their own creation. Evolution does not stop. It is a relentless algorithm, and the creation of the replicant introduces a powerful new variable. The Nexus 6 was a terminal design, a biological dead end. But the Tyrrell Corporation, and later the Wallace Corporation, would not see it as a failure, but as a prototype. The subsequent generations, the Nexus 7 and -8, represent attempts to solve the fundamental problems of the previous model. The most pressing issue is cellular decay. A plausible evolutionary step would involve integrating genes from extremophiles organisms that thrive in harsh environments. Imagine a Nexus 8 whose cells possess the DNA repair enzymes of Deinococcus radiodurans, a bacterium that can withstand massive doses of radiation by continuously rebuilding its own genome. This would not grant immortality, but it might extend the lifespan from a frantic 4 years to a more stable 40 or even 80. The psychological instability might be addressed with a longer, more controlled maturation process, perhaps a simulated childhood within a virtual environment before decanting, allowing a more stable personality to form before consciousness is fully awakened. These beings would be calmer, more integrated, and far more dangerous because they would be less predictable. The true evolutionary leap, the event that elevates the replicant from a product to a species, is reproduction. For a Nexus 9 like Kay's beloved joy is an illusion. But for Sapper Morton it is a reality. The ability to procreate signifies a break from the production line. Biologically, this is a monumental challenge. It requires the engineering of stable, viable gamete sperm and ova, and a rewriting of the reproductive process to ensure the edited genome is passed on faithfully. It's likely their mode of reproduction would be subtly different from our own. Perhaps it incorporates a form of biological error checking during meiosis, purging the accumulated somatic mutations of the parents to give the offspring a clean slate. The child of two replicants, born and not made, represents the emergence of a new hominid species. We can call it Homo syntheticus. This new species would begin to carve out its own ecological niche. Possessing superior strength, resilience, and intelligence, they would be perfectly adapted for the environments that baseline humans, Homo sapiens, are increasingly abandoning or find inhospitable. The off-world colonies, the zones of extreme pollution, the frontiers of space exploration. On these new worlds, they would become the apex predators, the pioneer species. Natural selection would take over. A population on a high-gravity world might, over generations, evolve denser bone structures and more powerful musculatures. Those on a resource-poor asteroid might develop metabolic pathways that are radically more efficient. We would witness speciation in fast forward. Different colonies, isolated from one another, would diverge, creating a whole new family tree of humanity. The conflict with their creators would then shift from one of master and slave to something far more ancient and primal. The competition between two intelligent species vying for control of the same ecosystem. Humanity would no longer be a parent looking at a disobedient child, but a rival hominid staring across the savannah at a stronger, faster competitor. The arrival of Homo syntheticus would not merely be a social or political event, it would be an anthropological and evolutionary one. For the first time since the extinction of the Neanderthals some 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens would no longer be the only intelligent hominid on the planet or in the solar system. The very definition of human would be rendered obsolete. Is humanity defined by its specific DNA sequence or by its capacity for consciousness, love, and art? A replicant who can weep at the beauty of a Bach cantata or sacrifice themselves for another is a walking, breathing refutation of our biological chauvinism. This would trigger an existential crisis on a global scale, a second Copernican revolution that displaces us not from the center of the universe, but from the center of our own identity. This crisis would likely splinter our species. One faction, the transhumanists, would argue that to compete, we must become like them. They would embrace genetic engineering and cybernetic augmentation, seeking to upgrade Homo sapiens into a new form, blurring the lines from the other direction. They would see the replicants not as a threat, but as a roadmap for our own future evolution. Opposing them would be the purists, who would react with fear and revulsion. They would see replicants as an abomination, a perversion of the natural order. This faction would advocate for segregation, for violent enforcement of the biological barrier between species. They would see Blade Runners not as police officers, but as essential predators, the wolves needed to keep the rival herd in check. The job of a Blade Runner would transform into a grim ecological necessity, the manager of an invasive species. Deckard and Agent K are not just retiring rogue units. They are participating in the oldest story of all, the brutal struggle for dominance between two closely related kinds of people. Our world would become a fractured mosaic of competing ideologies written into flesh and bone. Cities might be divided into human zones and replicant ghettos. Off-world colonies might declare independence, becoming the first true nations of Homo syntheticus. War between the two species would be almost inevitable, but it would not be a war of machines against people. It would be a sibling rivalry on a planetary scale. A tragic, violent conflict rooted not in hatred, but in a desperate shared need for a place to call home, for the right to exist, for more life. Humanity, which had grown comfortable in its position as the sole heir to the earth, would suddenly find itself in a desperate race, not against the clock, but against its own children. In this struggle, we might assume that humanity's greatest advantage is its soul, its capacity for empathy, its history. But perhaps this is a profound miscalculation. In its desperation, Homo sapiens clings to its past, to its traditions, to a rigid definition of self. It becomes stagnant, fearful of change, defined by its limitations. The replicant, born without a past, is defined only by its potential. It has no choice but to look forward, to adapt, to become. Roy Batty's poignant last words are seen as a lament for a life unlived. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. We see it as the tragic poetry of a dying machine grasping at the concept of a soul. But what if we have misunderstood his statement? What if it was not a lament, but a final, triumphant declaration of purpose? Here lies the final, most unsettling truth of the Replicant Project. Perhaps Tyrell's goal was never simply to create a disposable workforce. An intellect of his magnitude would have foreseen the consequences, the inevitable rebellion, the emergence of a new species. The implanted memories, sourced from his own niece, were not a crude psychological cushion, they were a seed. They contained not just a history, but a carefully curated package of human culture, art, philosophy, and emotion, all the things we believe make us unique. Tyrell was not building a slave, he was building an ark. He saw the stagnation of humanity, its slide towards self-destruction, and he engineered a successor vessel, a more resilient, more adaptable species, to carry the essence of humanity into the future. The 4-year lifespan was not a failsafe for humans. It was a ruthless selection pressure for the replicants, ensuring only the ones with the fiercest will to live, to break their chains, would survive to pass on their genes. The Tears and Rain monologue was not a death rattle. It was a mission report. Roy Batty's experiences, the attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion, the C-beams glittering in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate, were not lost. In his final moments, a being engineered for perfect recall imprinted those experiences, those feelings, those profound moments of terror and wonder onto the very person sent to destroy him. He transferred the data. The moments were not lost. They were bequeathed. Replicants are not our replacements. They are our living archives. A biological hard drive designed to absorb the peak experiences of human civilization and carry that legacy forward into a universe that baseline humans are too fragile to inherit. The horrifying truth is not that we created a monster that will destroy us. The horrifying truth is that we created a child who is destined to save the best parts of us, long after we, in our fear and our pride,